Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. We've all heard of people pleasing, but did you know that there are actually quite a few different varieties of it? A few different strains, if you will, that are going around. In this episode, we're going to get into 5 different types of people pleasing behaviors, dive into the underlying motivations, the characteristics, and a little bit about how to overcome it if you find yourself gravitating towards being a people pleaser when it comes to your content and your marketing. Hi, welcome back to Content with Character. Today we're going to start right off the bat with a story. I was recently at a coffee shop with my friend and she noticed a pair of pants I was wearing and she complimented me on my pants and said she loved them. They're like those cigarette-shaped pants. And so, of course, when somebody compliments something that I'm wearing, I feel awkward and I feel the need to tell them the entire backstory. So the funny thing actually about these pants were that they were a people-pleasing purchase, okay? So what happened was I walked into a consignment shop that somebody had mentioned I should check out, and I gotta say, the pricing in that consignment shop, it was not consignment shop pricing. It was like full-on new item pricing. And I walked in and I'm kind of looking at some of the price tags. And now, let me just say, I don't mind paying for high quality pieces of clothing. What I don't like is walking into a consignment shop thinking that I'm going to be getting, used or secondhand pricing and something is just as expensive as buying it new. So I walk into this consignment shop and I'm like looking at the price tags. I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? But regardless, I picked up a couple things to try on, so I didn't just like walk in and walk out basically. So I'm in there and I try on this pair of jeans that are like way too long, way too long, and just ever so slightly uncomfortable. And I was like, no, this won't do. Tried on a shirt and also tried on this pair of pants that my friend had complimented me on. Obviously, expensive is a subjective term, but these pants were $80. And I felt that that was a little expensive for a used, previously owned item. But I didn't want to walk out empty-handed, and I knew that those people had seen my face, and I didn't want them to recognize me and see me as the small business owner that didn't support other small business owners down the road. So I bought the pants. I bought the $80 pants, and I didn't even really want them. And I think that is where I'm going to start as I introduce this episode, and also I'll kick it off by introducing myself just in case you're new here, in case this is your first time listening. I'm Emily Aborn, and I have very long legs, yes, but they weren't long enough for those jeans, which actually were really great jeans, and I would have paid $80 for the jeans, but I wouldn't have paid $80 for those pants that I did end up walking out with. So in addition to being of the taller variety of humans, I'm also a podcast host, as you can hear by the sound of my voice, and I'm a podcast host of this show, as well as the She Built This podcast. I'm a speaker, a content copywriter, which is really what I spend most of my time doing, helping my clients just show up and shine in who they are in a way that's authentic and not people-pleasy by showing their true personality, and also not trying to be all things to all the people. So I think it's just like a perfect way to kind of kick it off. And if you want to learn more about me, you can visit my website, emilyaborn.com. It will provide you with resources, ways to connect, and also inform you of my weird love for the right pair of socks. Okay, enough with the clothing talk. If you love the Content with Character podcast, I would invite you to do one of 3 things after completing today's episode, after you check it off in that little box. So first, I would encourage you to tell a friend, share an episode with somebody else in your life who you feel it could be helpful for. Secondly, you could also alternatively or write me a review. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, you can simply write the review in there. I believe you also can do it on Spotify and Good Pods. And then the other idea for you to support the show and engage with the show is to leave a voicemail in the new voicemail feature, which you'll find in the show notes, or send me a little text message and engage with me in that way. If you do, I will read it or respond to it in an upcoming episode. And I did want to share a review of the week because I have not done this in a long time, and this one just came in from Nayak Danu in Canada. Nayak says, "Love the energy. Not only does Emily bring it when it comes to content to help me in my business, but her personality, that really is what makes this podcast shine. Thank you for your infectiousness." And I just wanted to say to Nayak, thank you so much. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. Those are some impeccably kind words, and I just wanted to really, really say thank you. I love that it's helping you, and I also hope that it's helping inspire you to let more of your personality out to play as well. So, on the topic of reviews, that's going to be a little part of today's discussion on people pleasing, because some of the 5 people pleasers I'm going to be talking about, they really love reviews and they really love approval, even more than the rest of us. And they feel that they may even feel that they need those things. Okay. So we're going to talk about that being an aspect of actually just looking at where it's coming from. It's not necessarily an indication that you love, that you're a people pleaser, because we all like positive feedback and we all like reviews and we all like approval. But it may be an indication that that is one of the flavors of people pleasing showing up. So we're going to talk about the 5 different ways that people pleasing shows up, but we're specifically going to focus today on the characteristics and maybe ways that it shows up in your marketing and in your content. We're also going to definitely talk about how to overcome or let go of it when it comes to your content or marketing, and then some ideas we can all work on no matter which flavor of people pleasing we're inclined to subject ourselves to. I think that subject ourselves to is the only way to say it. So let's start with the first one. This is the approval seekers. And really what these folks are looking for in being people pleasers is that they're looking for that external validation or acceptance from others. So this might come in the way of compliments or positive feedback or positive reviews. But really at the heart of it, at the heart of all of these, I think we're going to find a lot of worry and a lot of fear and a lot of concern over being rejected, right? So the approval seekers, they are probably really worried about people disapproving of them. So to kind of compensate for that, they may often change their opinions to match or agree with others. They may try to be agreeable. And you can see how in content and marketing and running a business, that can cause some challenges, right? So in content and marketing, you might find yourself, if you're an approval seeker, you might find yourself tailoring content to what you think other people want to hear, rather than expressing your own authentic personality, your own authentic voice, your own opinions and ideas. You may also find yourself changing your branding or your messaging very often as you kind of try to keep up with trends or alter it based on feedback that you're getting from other people. And then there's also this overemphasis on positive reviews and testimonials. And, I think it could look a number of ways. It could either be completely ignoring the bad ones or fixating on the bad ones and thinking that, you're trash, it's trash, we're all trash, unless you get a lot of positive reviews and a lot of positive feedback. And then again, we kind of touched on this, but just not ever really saying what you think or what you believe, letting people in your business, whether it be clients or collaborators or whatever else, but letting people in that really have no business being there in the first place. Cheering people on that you don't actually really want to be cheering on. Approval seeking can kind of show up in a number of ways, but really it's rooted in this desire for external validation and external acceptance. So not finding your worth really, really in and of yourself, but looking to other people and then watching as you people please to ensure that you get that. The second one is conflict avoiders. Now, this is like when you, at the root, have you have a strong dislike or a fear of confrontation, and maybe a need or a desire to maintain harmony at all times. So really the conflict avoider is going to kind of want to go with the flow, right? Go along with others in order to avoid those arguments. They're going to want to suppress their personal opinions and in some cases suppress their needs. Maybe be really malleable and like let people bowl over their boundaries a lot. And as a result, it can bring up feelings of internal resentment or internal frustration because your desire to reduce that conflict around you is causing conflict within you. So in our content and in our marketing, conflict avoiding will show up as avoiding controversial topics or sharing strong opinions. So you can also, you'll be able to see as we go through these how a lot of these overlap, and it's kind of all one big dilemma. But the other way this shows up is like overly diplomatic language. So what I often see is people will say something in a way that isn't really clear or concise or specific. And you're like, I have no idea what they're saying. Or it might be like non-committal language or falling always to fact rather than any sort of like viewpoint or personality. This might be a person that really likes ChatGPT to write things for them because it can be a little bit more factual, right? They may also be reluctant to address negative feedback or criticism directly. I worked with a service provider like this one time. She had no interest in solving the problem between us and just completely disappeared during the middle of our project, which I had already paid for. It was lovely, but because she wasn't able to handle that conflict or had like a fear, probably a fear of the conflict or the potential of a confrontation, she just completely like melted into the background. So the other way that this can show up is, like I said, like letting people trample over your boundaries or maybe even on your platforms. I've definitely been here where I've created a space and somebody else has kind of gone ahead and poo-pooed on that space. And then I didn't take action. I sort of like in a desire to maintain harmony or avoid conflict, I just kind of went along with it or maybe suppressed my own personal need or opinion. And I think I'm a lot better with that now, but I definitely used to fall into that conflict avoidance often because I did not like conflict very much. The third one, the third people pleasing activity is caretaking. And this is really driven by this need to feel useful, to be needed by people. So you can see how, you're still getting your validation from external sources, but you're like, oh, they need me. I'm useful. I'm helpful, right? So maybe this looks like becoming over involved in other people's problems or offering unsolicited help or advice. And at the same time that's all happening, you may be neglecting your own personal needs in taking care of others. This is where I can clearly see, I have somebody in mind actually, where it really is an example of the cobbler's son's shoes. She's always stepping in to help other people, and she does it really, really beautifully. And she's always very useful and has this need to be needed. But meanwhile, her own problem, the same one she solves for other people, is completely neglected. So it may show up like that. It may show up to overcommitting to customers' demands and requests. I see that same thing happen with the same individual. It may look like offering tons and tons of free resources or generous discounts, potentially at your own loss, right? Potentially when you have it all on the line, or when you can't afford to even do so. And then I think that the content and the marketing really focuses heavily on solving problems. Like this is a good thing and a bad thing, but it focuses really heavily on solving problems and sometimes neglects kind of your own business needs. So what I mean by that is maybe you're really hesitant to ever promote your own stuff because you're always kind of giving and helping your clients and customers solve their problems, that you neglect the fact that you're over there running a business and need to also make a profit. And like, it's just the same thing, always giving, never asking. That could show up in collaborations. It could show up in content. It could show up in a number of different ways. Always giving, never asking. Then we have the perfectionists. This is really a people pleasing that comes along with a fear of criticism. So most likely the standards have been self-imposed, although of course they can come from those little voices in our head that came from when we were kids, right? But this is really just like a fear of criticism and having really, really high standards for yourself. And so as a result, you don't want to be seen as anything other than perfect by other people. This might look like being overly critical of yourself to a point where you can't hit send or post because, quote unquote, it's not perfect. And spoiler alert, it's usually never perfect. So this can take a really, really long time for a perfectionist to actually get any sort of content or marketing out there. The other one is just trying to take on too much to like overachieve and prove worth and ability. And in taking on too much, it still needs to be perfect. So it's like you're way over kind of committing yourself. This is a person, a people-pleasing type that does have a really low tolerance for negative feedback. And it's not necessarily because they need that approval from other people, but it's because those self-imposed high standards are already busy judging themselves so very much. And so when they get negative feedback, it just kind of reinforces that. And then they're stuck in that loop of judging themselves more and more and more and more. So a lot of times there will be time wasted. Things are not published or done or completed because you've overestimated what you can achieve. And it all needs to be done perfectly. And it's just like a total, I can see it going very, very badly. And then there's another little piece of this that I see in content creation and in marketing a lot. And that is just this like overly, it's like too perfect, right? So the content is so overly polished that it almost is just like the personality has been totally drained of it. And I think it comes off as like very inauthentic or overly corporate. It's like somebody that's like, I follow all the rules, but then you read it and you're like, ooh, I wish they had like a typo in there or something so I could feel like they were a human being. So not that it's bad not to have any typos. I mean, we should all strive for that. But anyway, it's just like that overly polished content. And it can come off as cold or inauthentic or even like kind of corporate-y in tone. And then lastly, the fifth one I want to touch on is that empath. And that's a person who it's kind of like the helper. It's kind of like the caretaker, but you're really just like deeply in tune with what others need and feel. And you want to get other people out of their discomfort and help them to absorb their stress or negative emotions. And so you do whatever is needed to make that happen. So 3 ways that this might show up is like your content is so highly emotionally driven. And in being so, you're trying to just like really resonate deeply with people, but it's almost like a little too deep, right? Okay, it's like a little too maybe feelings based. And I'm trying to think of like how I would describe this more tangibly, but I'm coming up a little blank here. But I do know it when I see it. I don't know, maybe you do too. But the marketing pieces that you employ, they may put all of that emotion, all of that emotional connection, which trust me, I think is an absolutely beautiful, wonderful thing. But when you put that first and foremost or only, and you never kind of focus on, again, just like the caretaker, like you never focus on your own business growth, you can see how it would be like detrimental, right? So you're never like asking for anything in return. You're just kind of staying in that emotional place. And then the other thing is this person may have just like kind of a harder time making objective, rational, data-backed decisions, especially the ones that might like let's say you can see something clear as day when it comes to your bank account, for example. And you know that you have to make a decision that might upset your customers, like raise your pricing or something like that. So you might hesitate to make those or even struggle to make those kind of objective decisions that might cause somebody else discomfort, but you know you need to make. So like I said, obviously a lot of these are going to overlap. And I am guilty of showing up in so many of these ways. In fact, as I was kind of looking through there's even more types of people pleasing than this, but I was looking through these ones and I was like, wow, this is really something to work on, and not just work on, let's overcome this, but really looking at like also where it comes from, and asking yourself kind of what the driving force is, what the motivation is behind what you're doing, because I think that will give you some clearer information on what you need to do to kind of work through it and overcome it. So let's go through them again. And we'll just talk about a few strategies that will be helpful when it comes to your content and your marketing to not let these people-pleasing tendencies run the show. Okay, so we're going to start back with the approval seekers. Now, remember, this is that person looking for like this real external validation. So one thing an approval seeker can do is to develop a really strong brand voice, a really strong brand identity. And I would encourage you to root that in your values and in your beliefs. So like you want your messaging to be really, really rooted in what matters most to you. And then from that place, you can then create content that adds value, but isn't looking for like constant praise, right? That would be a helpful beginning. And I will say this, one of the things I love helping people with is creating brand messaging guides. I really do think that it can help you to kind of overcome some of this people pleasing, because it can be confusing to know what to share. You don't want to say something that doesn't like land with people. You want to be adding value, but you don't want to be, stepping on any toes. And honestly, I mean, we're going to get to this at the end, but that's just not quite 100% possible if you're really staying true to your own core message and your own true values and beliefs. But I think it's really helpful to know what those are and to be so strong in what they are that you have that backing you. Like that internal guidance is backing you rather than what everybody else has to say about it. And then I think once you have all that established as an approval seeker, you need to be like, okay, now we're done. Like not done, but you need to limit the amount of times that you change your branding, and maybe do it only during certain periods, right? So you're making actual like slow, intentional, data-driven decisions instead of doing things on a whim based on maybe what other people are saying for feedback. But really, like I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but you want to get that internal backing system so that you are backing yourself. Like you are 100% in on you, and it doesn't matter what other people have to say about it, because you know where you stand and what you want to put forth, right? Okay. For the conflict avoiders, they're going to want to do something similar, and that is to get really clear on those core principles and then stand behind them. So probably for the conflict avoider, maybe there are places that you need to say, well, what do I really think about this thing? And then stand behind those beliefs and those values in your content and marketing. And some of the other things that conflict avoiders need to work on is to really learn to address criticism, whether that be internal or external, but address it constructively and also openly. So that might need to be conversations, right? That might need to be setting boundaries. It might need to be being more assertive in some situations or standing up for yourself. So really getting solid in where you need to like address some of the criticism or the conflict or the confrontation that you're trying to avoid. And then for the caretakers, they will want to work on establishing clear policies and boundaries that are helpful for their clients, but also helpful for them. And like really distinguishing between, okay, what is going to be free? Like, for example, my podcast is going to be free. My copywriting service is not going to be free, right? So differentiating between what is free and what is a paid service, and ensuring that your pricing reflects what you need. So it reflects the value you're giving, and also building that sustainability and that growth of your business. So when it comes to your content specifically and your marketing, making sure that you are including, you are giving free value, of course, in our content. We all are. We're all being helpful, or should be. But you also want to balance that with those, calls to action, reminding people that you do have paid services, and being confident in standing behind those prices. Okay. And then for my perfectionists, let's talk about I don't know. I did do an episode on the different types of perfectionism. So I'll make sure I include a link to that in the show notes, because I think, oh no, you know what? I did one on procrastination, but this is making me realize I would love to do one on perfectionism. So anyway, the one on procrastination will be in the show notes. There is a perfectionist type of procrastination, and maybe we'll do one on perfectionism soon, because there are different types of perfectionism too. Those show up in different ways. But for the perfectionists, setting realistic deadlines for content creation and for everything that you decide to do, right? For all of the marketing things that you decide to do. Set yourself realistic deadlines and expectations. And here's the important part: if you're prone to procrastinating due to perfectionism, adhering to those timelines. So we just have to get to a place where we embrace this idea. I mean, I could say it until I'm blue in the face, and I know you know this, but the idea of good enough, it really is good enough. And I just so believe in making progress over having this perfect self, perfect business, perfect whatever. So yes, you want it to be impeccable. And if I know anything about perfectionists, it is going to be absolutely impeccable in what you deliver, and better than like 99% of people already, but it does not need to be perfect. And then I also want you to make room for like authentic, real, relatable, human, maybe even messy side of being a business owner, and letting that shine through in your content and your marketing. Like, it's okay to be an actual imperfect, messy human being. In fact, I think people like it better. I just wrote back to someone recently and she said the email was laden with typos. And I'm like, yeah, I liked it. I actually really liked it. It reminded me that a human being writes your stuff and not like ChatGPT like everybody else. So not everybody else, but you know what I mean. Okay. Last one is the empaths. And I think this specifically, in your content creation, in your marketing, you're going to want to balance the emotional with clear, tangible, actionable, and calls to action. Okay. So like, don't just always worry about keeping everybody comfortable. Also make sure that they have strategic calls to action, that you are using boundaries, that you are looking at your data to guide your decisions, and ensuring that that's aligning with your business objectives. Again, there's a balance, right? It's like not all data and not all emotion. It has to kind of be a balance. But developing your plan or your strategy from a place that looks at that emotional piece and also really helps you go in the direction that you want to go. So you have to kind of take into consideration the emotions and the practical, the practical and the hard stuff, right? Not that they can't be the one and the same, but most of the time they're not. Okay. And lastly, I just want to encourage us all. I mean, I do think people pleasing is very, very normal. I mean, if you go onto Instagram for 5 seconds, you will see a bazillion quotes on how you can't make everybody happy without making yourself unhappy. Or chances are, if nobody around you is miserable, you're miserable, right? There's a million of them. And it's not a bad thing. Why would that be a bad thing to want everybody to be happy? It is not a bad thing. It probably comes from a place of fear or a place of trying to seek external validation. There are a number of different reasons for it. And again, that's where you kind of have to do some exploring for yourself. And so do I. But if everyone around us is happy, then chances are very high that we are not happy. And I've been there. And the other thing is, not everybody's going to like you. And I feel like I finally let go of this. Like, okay, not everyone is going to like me. I don't like everybody. Do you? Do you like everybody? No. So, well, maybe you do, but I don't like everybody. So I have to remind myself of that. Like, if everybody likes me, I probably don't like myself. I'm probably not being myself. So you've seen all the quotes. You've heard all the positive pep talks. I'm not going to bore you with those cliches. But I did want to kind of leave us with like 6 sort of things we can all work on to help unravel this people-pleasing tendency, especially when it comes to being business owners. I'm sure it shows up in other ways in our lives too, but around being business owners. I don't want you spending $80 on pants that you don't even want. And there's the other one that we didn't even talk about is purchasing courses and trying to support people when you don't even really want to do the thing that they're offering you. That is like my number one. I've done that so many times. When I spend money on something I don't even really want because I want to support them, right? Or make sure that they know that somebody is cheering them on. And then it comes the day that I have to go to that workshop that I signed up for, and I really just don't want to. So for all of us, these are 6 things that can help. And number 1 is self-awareness. Listening to this podcast is like your first step, or maybe your 7th if you've already been working on this for a long time, but just like really recognizing and acknowledging that you do have people-pleasing tendencies. And then thinking about how these are impacting you in your business. What business decisions are these making? And what is it costing you? When I was signing up for all of those things, it cost me money I didn't want to be spending, and I didn't really have to be spending. So I've done that a lot in my life. The second one is to set boundaries. Establish clear, upfront boundaries. This comes to your interactions with clients, customers, collaborators, with people that you're interacting with on social media, with people that you let into your life. Establish clear boundaries and communicate them openly, and then follow through and stick to them. The third one is to find out what your core values are. What is the mission of your business? What is the thing that you are here to do? Reconnect with that. Reconnect with those values and your why, and root yourself in that place so that that's the place you're coming from when you're creating content and when you are marketing yourself. You want it to consistently reflect those things that you feel strongly inside, and not just be like a ping pong effect, a mirror effect of every single other person outside of you. The fourth one is to ask for feedback. And I think that when you're asking for feedback, you are going to want to be selective with who you ask. I don't just get feedback from anybody. I make sure that I have people who I trust, maybe people I look up to, so mentors or peers or business coaches. And what you want from them is you want them to see the best parts of you, and you also want them to be able to provide objective perspectives when they need to, and be really, really honest and upfront with you on those things. So have people in your life that you can trust, that you can get feedback from, and that can do it in a loving, compassionate way, while being truthful. And then, of course, like for a lot of people that claim to or do struggle with people pleasing, you want to make sure that, this term is so overused. It's like we need a new word for it, but you just do want to prioritize your self-care. And by that, I mean, are you just jumping from thing to thing to thing and need to need of the other person, and not taking time to go pee or to drink water or to give yourself a snack? Or are you taking on too many things where you don't even have enough time for self-care, right? So you want to balance the needs of being a business owner, which there are. It is a big responsibility, it is a big job, but with your personal well-being, and avoid a lot of that burnout, people pleasing. Oh my gosh, I have to direct you to my friend Lisa Zarotny's Positively Productive podcast, because she has so many episodes on this, and I will include some links in the show notes. But she talks all the time about basically how people pleasing is the fast track to burnout. And a lot of the ways to overcome that are to prioritize your own self-care, delegating tasks when you can, and taking time for focusing on you. And then lastly, come up with a plan. It doesn't have to be strategic, but if you want it to be strategic, come up with a plan that works towards your goals and works towards your goals in a clear way with measurable outcomes. And once you have your plan, yes, it's flexible. Yes, it's malleable because you are always going to be genuinely improving it. But stick with your plan. And that plan alone for some of us is exactly what we need. It is the roadmap to helping us not be swayed by this, that, and the other thing when it comes to kind of people pleasing our way through. So once again, I think that's a good place to talk about that brand messaging guide, because that's what that is. It is a roadmap for you. It is a plan. I also do strategy sessions, and I will help you to come up with a very specific plan where we focus on what your goals are, and we come up with a plan that you can actually start implementing and you can stick to, and you can make adjustments as you go, but you're not toppling all over yourself trying to figure out what other people want of you all the time. So all the links to that will be in the show notes. All of the links to the resources I mentioned, like Lisa's podcast, will also be in the show notes. And I hope that this helped you in some small way, even to just maybe identify what type of people pleasing maybe you do most often, but most definitely our content and our marketing and our businesses aren't really the place we want to have it be emphasized. Like I said, I don't want you buying an $80 pair of pants that you didn't even really want, but they are wicked cute pants. And I'm glad I got them for the very purposes of being able to share this lesson with you. But again, not recommended. Okay. Next week is going to be a little bit of a grab bag episode. It's kind of a surprise. So I'm going to hold off on telling you what it's about. I know I always like to give you a little highlight, but we're not doing that this time. And then we're going to wrap up the month of June with a topic that's been on my mind a lot lately, and that is what to do when you run out of steam. Like, how do you end something? Ooh, it's going to be fun. I told you we were having all the fun this month. Okay, I will chat with you next week. Thanks for listening and being here. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com, and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.